Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of my Out of the Park Baseball 25 series with the Oakland Athletics, and today we're going to be wrapping up the first season of the series. So as you can see, we finished 73 and 89, honestly a record better than I would have thought that we would finish with, especially at the end of the first season. We did end up finishing last in our division, but as you can see, not quite last in the American League. The bottom of the league was pretty similar throughout both the American and National Leagues. We got the Royals, Tigers, White Sox, Blue Jays, Angels down here with us, and also sort of the Rangers. The Yankees also only finished with 79 wins. Pretty unsurprising here at the bottom, except possibly the Blue Jays finishing with 73 wins. And then in the National League, we've got the Nationals, Pirates, Rockies, Cardinals, and Brewers in the 70s wins. So our pick isn't exactly going to be right at the top, but still should see a decent pick next season. Going into kind of the index, look at our expected record, and our expected record was lower than this by 6 games, 67 to 95. Was our record based on run differential. So again, a little bit over performance there. Not too surprised at that. Looking at kind of our team rankings, as you would expect, we're pretty much bottom in everything. 14th pretty much across the board in offense. Did steal a lot of bases though, thanks to Story Ruiz. And then in pitching, of course our pitching kind of carried us a bit at the beginning of the season, which led to our good record that we had at first. But of course, once we moved, kind of our veteran guys like Wood, obviously our pitching was not as good going forward. Then of course our defense was also bad, which is something that I think should at least be better next season. So with that said, I'm going to go and look at kind of how our team performed, go guy by guy, and also kind of talk a bit about next season. So first we're going to go into offense. This is our team that finished the season on the roster for us. I also changed the view here for pitching and hitting statistics, as you might notice. So things may look a bit different here, but kind of put some more things on here that I kind of wanted to see in the first view. So going from the bottom up, Brett Harris, he didn't really get much time for us, so what he did is kind of irrelevant. He'll probably be back down in AAA next season. Nick Allen, of course, didn't hit pretty much at all. I have no plans to move him off, though. Contact bat. We've had him under team control for a while, unless like a shortstop presents itself to us in the offseason somehow. I would expect him to be back next season. Aledmus Diaz, kind of our veteran backup infielder. I'm sure he won't be back. Don't really care too much about his season. He wasn't that good for us at the plate. Played all the backup infield positions. So, Brent Rooker, he actually had a pretty terrible season for us. He still had 29 homers, but 73 WRC plus. His BABIP was really low, so I'm sure that contributed some of it. But 380 slugging. This negative WAR over 1. Can't be doing that as a guy who's mostly played first base for us this season. I would assume he's not going to be back next year. I'm probably going to look to trade him if I can get anything for him. If not, he might just get non-tendered. Have to see. I'm kind of looking to free up 2 spots on offense. A lot of these guys, there's no reason to get anybody to put in front of them. As you know, a lot of them are pretty young players, so not looking to block off any playing time. But Rooker and Seth Brown are probably 2 players that have the greatest chance of not being on the roster hitter-wise. Mr. Ruiz, he actually, that 76 WRC plus, not really great, but a big improvement to how he started the season. Of course, if you remember, he started the season pretty rough in the 50s in the early months. Very bad little stretch in March. But then over the season crept up, had a pretty good June and July, and an above average July by OPS plus. And then kind of finished the season so-so, not a good August, but bounced back in September a bit, so a bit up and down offensively. He was way better against lefties than righties, so something to consider there. But yeah, all in all, not too bad of a year for him. Hopefully we see a bit of improvement next season. Abraham Toro, he honestly is another player who probably won't be here. He just doesn't really fit because he's not a starter. He also can't really play all of the infield positions. Like, he's pretty much a first and third guy, and that's really not too helpful. He does have an option left, so maybe we just send him down next season. But of course, not a player in the future plans. Joao Hernandez, he was decent. Of course, a contact-oriented bat, so don't expect him to have like the highest OPS plus, WRC plus. But he was fine. One thing we should probably do, maybe focus on with player development, is his defense. It actually wasn't bad here. It was about average, but kind of would like the defensive ratings to be, better, especially in the range if he's going to be playing everyday second base for us, which I kind of want him to do next season, just to kind of, give him a full season and see how that works out. Carlos Perez, he was a backup catcher for kind of the second half of the season. Didn't play much. Wasn't too bad. He might be back as our backup catcher next year. Zach Geloff, of course, we covered his early season struggles last season, and kind of looking at the end of this season, of course, he had a very good July, which we covered at the time when it happened. And then August, he also was above average hitter. So he definitely finished the season strong. Had a bit of a tail off there in September, but high on base there. Or at least decently high. I would like to see. Wasn't hitting for much power, but I'm confident that he's going to have a much better season next year. Hopefully he'll be one of our better hitters on the team. He already kind of was, I guess, but also hoping that our team, or at least our offense as a whole, is better. See some improvement from these young players. Shea Langoliers, he is another player who really improved as the season went on. He had a good start to the season, actually, which I honestly forgot myself. Good April, was bad in May and June, really bad in June, and then picked it up and finished the season very strong. Just that his catching defense isn't the absolute greatest besides throwing runners out. He actually should be a fairly decent hitting catcher. Again, he's going to be back in that role next year for us. I'm hoping to get similar production for him. But yeah, if he could be about a league average hitter at catcher, he could be a pretty, he's definitely one of our better players overall on the roster right now. Seth Brown, pretty decent season, a lot of homers from him. Of course, he missed a good chunk of time in the middle of the year, but other than that, pretty much expected from Seth Brown, one of the better hitters that we have on the roster. Like I briefly mentioned with Brent Rooker, he's someone who I'm probably going to try to move just because I want to kind of, churn some guys in and out of here. He's been an A for a while. He's going to be, his ARB estimate next year is like 5.5, so it would be nice to probably get that off the books, trade him, hopefully get something of value, and then sign a short-term starter kind of in that role. We have, as I've kind of talked about throughout the season, we have a lot of that first base, corner outfield DH type, so I feel like it would be good to, cycle one of those guys out, or at least two of those guys out, and Rooker or Brown definitely make the most sense to move on from there. So again, solid season from him. It's yet to be seen whether he'll return to the organization next season. Rafael Lantigua, of course, we got him in a trade. We got him in the trade where we sent Paul Blackburn and a minor league pitcher, Nate Detmer, to the Blue Jays. We got him and Jalen Rudd in return. He was pretty decent for us. I like his ratings, of course. Not a lot of power, but pretty good across the board in all of the other ratings. Not a great corner outfielder, but he was fine offensively. Once he got to the big leagues with us, he had a brief stint in AAA with us, but we ended up calling him up. I believe he might have been a roster expansion call up. But yeah, he got a decent amount of time, could play a little bit of infield, and yeah, he was fine for us. I'm sure he'll probably be back on the roster as a backup corner outfielder next season. Denzel Clark, one of our top prospects, he got the call once we made kind of our trade deadline moves. I don't remember if he got called right after that, but it wasn't like that long after. I think he might have been hurt for a little bit still after the trade deadline. Wasn't really great in the minor leagues. displayed a lot of power in a short time in AAA this season, but again wasn't like an overall like good, like above average hitter there. But in the major leagues, he actually performed a bit better than his AAA line, WRC plus of 106. And yeah, he was pretty good for us. Actually was able to put up 2 WAR in a short time, and I think a decent amount of that might be attributed to his defense. He he was a plus defender in right field for us. In only 42 games, his zone rating of 4 and only 42 games or 3.9. That's pretty solid. He, of course, in a corner is pretty good. His outfield arm isn't great, but he's got great range, so definitely a plus defender in the corner. Probably could play him a bit in center field, but of course we have Ruiz out there every day. And then, of course, our best hitter in the season, Ryan Noda. Didn't really notice this as the season was on, but, now that I changed my view, he was striking out 36% of the time. That is a pretty crazy amount, honestly kind of crazy, that he was able to give this kind of offensive production while doing that. Obviously, he does walk a decent amount of the time, but still, 36%. Pretty crazy. And also seeing Brent Rooker is also above 30%. So this is the kind of line that usually happens when you're striking out that much of the time. But yeah, almost a 30 homer season for him. He's another guy who missed a bit of time for injuries, but I mean, he's definitely our best player on the major league roster. Probably the player I'm most confident will sustain this. I mean, of course, he's got that good discipline. Positionally, he actually played a lot of left. I know it said that he's in the lineup of DH there, but of course, he kind of bounced around a lot. And of course, with Seth Brown missing time, that's when he got the most time left. Would like to see him get out in the field a little more next season, whether it's in first or left. Of course, not the greatest defender, but he is a corner guy, for a reason. That's because of his bat, and his bat definitely played this season. So very nice to see that. Hopefully, see maybe a bit of improvement from him next season. That would be pretty cool. All right, moving on to the pitching. We'll just kind of sort this by FIP is how I'll kind of go through everybody. And let's start at the top for us on the pitching side. Luis Medina, of course, he started the season hurt. He pitched in the bullpen for us. Not the greatest season. Pretty high whip. Did strike out a lot of guys. Super high BABIP. He's probably just a reliever for us. Really good fastball. A bit of control issue, but a lot of these pitchers are kind of just like org depth, like quality. These guys aren't in the long-term plans as like starters or anything, but one person who is Mason Miller. Great season from him. I was actually kind of concerned about him starting the season. I don't think he kind of had a few blow up months. Like he was really bad in May, really bad in July again, but didn't allow an earned run for the last 2 months of the season. So he really became sharp at the end of the season, which really helped his numbers as well. He got 65 innings of work. Again, this is somebody long-term who I'm trying to develop as a starter. Very good ratings across the board here. 4 pitches, 3 that are way above average. We're going to try to get this stamina up. Of course, he probably could have started this season. I mean, you can start people with the 35 stamina, but, with me not being the manager, I didn't want to try to manage his pitch count like too closely. I didn't want to just send him out there for 100 pitches every day, and kind of let that third time through the order he gets crushed. So he's someone who I'm definitely trying to put in a starting role next season, and someone that we're going to put in the lab to try to get that stamina up as well. Tom Grosgrove, somebody who I picked up off of waivers. Was kind of surprised to see that the Padres waived him, especially since he has options left. I really like his ratings. He's got good stuff in movement across the board, 3 pitches. He's a pretty solid lefty reliever, and he performed like that. He wasn't even bad in San Diego when he was there. Whip was a bit high with us. BABIP was high, but again, somebody that I think could be pretty decent for us. Joe Boyle. Our FIP drop off here is pretty big. We're mid 3s here, and then we jump all the way up to the 4s. Though with him, I guess that's not too surprising. Great stuff from him. No idea where it's going. We know that. Would like him to strike out more guys. That stuff, because obviously he is going to walk a lot of people. So, in OOTP, I find that these low control guys can be pretty volatile, which makes sense, obviously, because they're controlled, but these results can vary pretty largely from season to season, so hopefully we get a better year from him. Next year, Thomas Zapucki, who is a waiver claim I made from the Giants earlier in the year. I think he was pigeonholed here as a starter once we kind of made some of our moves. He got 7 starts. I would be very confident saying that he was a lot better as a reliever, and he was. He was bad as a starter. It looks like he probably started some games with the Giants, but yeah, he's definitely not a starter. We're going to make sure he's in a relief role as that second lefty with Cosgrove in the bullpen. But yeah, he's definitely not a starter, and that definitely killed his performance. But overall, a good season in relief for him. So he's going to be back in that role next season for sure, and his numbers should be better because of it. Scott Alexander, he's been a lot of the time injured. I think he missed the start of the season, or maybe not a lot of time, but he had a few small stints. Very soft thrower. Doesn't allow many homers though, and that definitely did it for him. A lot of strikeouts. He is definitely not going to be in the roster next year. His ratings have taken a nosedive. Scott Efros, of course, we got him from the Yankees. 1.6 ERA for him. Not the highest leverage usage for him. So I'm kind of thinking that probably has a lot to do with his numbers. Also, very low BABIP. So probably a decent bit lucky. But of course, he wasn't in the toughest of situations as well. So kind of got to consider those factors. Brady Basso, he as a decent control pitcher. JP Sears was awful for us the entire year. I think he had like a 7+. I mean, he was down by the time we hit the All-Star break. I think he's really the only player that we had that happen where performance was just so bad. We had to someone who was originally on the roster and didn't make a reappearance throughout the season at all. Kyle Muller, he was another player who started as a reliever for us this season, but of course once we made the rotation moves that we did, he got put into the rotation, and I don't think he was as bad as Zapucki as a starter. He was not good as a starter, but again, kind of a situation where we don't have that many quality pitchers, so he just kind of got put in the rotation since he is one of our better rated pitchers. So again, he's going to be a reliever next year, so he should be much better in that role. Mitch Spence is a guy who did both, who actually should be a starter. He's got decent 4 pitches, a ground ball guy. He's someone who I might put in the lab as well in the offseason. Try to get that stuff up, or at least improve his pitches. Yeah, with his extreme ground ball profile, he's captain personality. He should be someone who hopefully takes to the dev lab. This was only his first year control, even though he is 26. He's someone who I'm looking forward to kind of having as a middle kind of the rotation starter. He's someone who I think could be kind of a staple in our rotation going forward, a guy, with not the highest ratings, but someone who should perform above his ratings with that extreme ground ball profile. And not the greatest fit for him. He did have decent strikeout to walk numbers. Of course, as a starter, he doesn't have the highest leverage index. But yeah, Sierra under 4. A lot of the kind of metric statistics, FIP isn't the greatest, but he did also have kind of high BABIP, so hopefully he'll be inducing, kind of soft ground balls. Again, 52 ground ball rate, which was one of the better ones on our team. I could see that going even higher, so of course, if the ground ball rate continues to climb higher as he gets better, that should be, a plus. Just kind of curious at his splits. He was good as a reliever, but he was also good as a starter. Just wanted to kind of make sure. Or just at least see, maybe he was better as a starter than a reliever. Just kind of looking at the splits there to see how that kind of broke down. Russ Stripling, of course, the veteran who we wanted to move but couldn't. He was fine. High 4 FIP, ERA in the 4s. Pretty much exactly what you would expect for him. It just, not the highest rated guy in the game, so. These players are tough to move in OOTP in real life. a team, probably, who's kind of still sort of in it, would probably like to acquire a guy like this for the back end of the rotation, but not in this game. Jack Cushing, kind of a random guy who we brought up throughout the season. He was just kind of the first guy to come up whenever we had an injury. So he got 16 games, 16 innings. He is someone who probably should start. Only 3 pitches, but good control. This is, a starter's profile. He's like kind of a soft thrower, something that doesn't really work out of the bullpen. He has a 50 overall rating somehow. I'm going to guess that's because he's a reliever. But yeah, not something that's too intriguing here, but he's got options left, so I'm sure he'll make appearances in future seasons. Adrian Martinez kind of getting to the cannon fodder kind of section of the pitching, guys who are just here pretty much. Super high whip from him. I mean, he doesn't really strike out anybody. He had a high BABIP. I mean, he was the long man. When you're the long man on one of the worst teams in the league, you know that this guy isn't. We don't really have any expectations for him, but somebody who we kind of did have expectations for is Zach Jackson. In real life, he's been pretty good for them in 2022. He was good for them in 2023. I believe he was hurt, but still good in limited time. So in real life, he's been one of their better relievers. I think he might have even he's closed a few games for them. He's someone who should be better than this. It looks like his problem was walks. He definitely shouldn't be walking this many guys, although his control also isn't the best in this game. In real life, I would definitely say it's probably better. But yeah, it looks like walks definitely did him in. He also had a very low leverage index somehow. Like, of course, not as low as Martinez, who was, like I said, was a long man. He did strike, the walk rate here is, I mean, he walked more guys or not more guys, but he walked a higher percentage of batters than Joe Boyle, just a touch. And it looks like he also had a lot of inherited runners score. So that was an issue for him as well. So he's going to be back. With kind of the pitching things and just taking a long-term view at the pitching, Mason Miller, Zach Jackson, Joe Boyle, these are the guys, probably Scott Efros as well. And Tom Cosgrove, I should mention. These are the guys who probably have the highest chance of staying. Like, I'm sure those guys will be in the major league team. With kind of the back end of pitching, I like to, my kind of style is rotating guys in and out. Like, I'm on waivers all the time looking to claim interesting pitchers, pitchers that probably honestly shouldn't be waived in this game, but I'm always looking to kind of churn pitchers in this game and just pick up guys with the most interesting ratings. I'm just going over the rotation. Of course, Stripling won't be back. Zapucki and Muller, as I talked about, should be in the bullpen. Obviously, we want Miller as a starter next season, but Miller and Spence are probably in Basso. Probably, I'm sure he'll be there just because. Also, maybe you should think about trying to train his stamina rating. I think he's a guy who could be a bit of a project, even though he is 26. He has a lot of control left, so it might be a good idea for us to improve that secondary stuff for him and maybe try to get a boost in his stuff rating. That could be an interesting play. Alright, so one last thing that I wanted to go over just before the season ended was just kind of do some look around the league stuff. So here's the playoffs. The Braves won the World Series. Not a shocker there. What kind of is a shock is just how the American League went. It was just weird. Like, the Guardians were the ones who got defeated in the World Series. You have a Twins Guardians championship series. Twins beating the O's. Of course, there's some teams like the Yankees were below 500. The Rays were also. It was just a very weird American League. Like, I guess that's what kind of happens with how, like, good, so to speak, I guess, the bottom of the American League was. But the records were very even. Like, the Orioles only had 87 wins. The Astros were the highest total with 96. And you kind of have a similar weird thing in the National League. Like, the Dodgers were only 81 and 81. I mean, we have to look to see what happened here. It doesn't really even look like they had a bunch of injuries. Ohtani was bad. Actually, no, he wasn't even. I mean, he slugged a ton, but other than that, I guess he kind of was bad at the plate. Yeah, I don't understand what's happening here, but yeah, they've got like Dalton Rushing hitting second for them, also not being like good for them somehow. Mookie Betts. Yeah, I would have to bet that a lot of this weirdness, yeah, has to do with this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, like obviously, like his shortstop rating is bad in this game, and they're playing him at short still. Yeah, I'm guessing this team's defense was so bad that it held them back. And yeah, they're like bottom of the National League in defense, which of course OOTP defense is pretty important. And Bobby Miller was bad. Yeah, they had a ton of underperforming players. Wow, that's insane to see that they didn't even make the playoffs. Diamondbacks made the playoffs at 84 and 78 in that division. Yeah, that is pretty crazy. Yeah, a very weird year across the league for sure. I'll look at some stats. I'm just kind of pop across the league leaders here. I know kind of the early returns of the game is that Wyatt Langford is like the greatest player of all time in these sims, or at least that I've seen on the forums and stuff. Yeah, he was incredible as a rookie, and his ratings are super high. Kyle Schwarber leads the league in homers. Interesting that he's good. It's pretty rare in OTP that, at least in my opinion, that you see these really low contact, high power players actually ever do anything. Usually, in my experience, they're at least at best very inconsistent, but rare that you see them actually turn out good seasons. I know one player that I wanted to highlight is, of course, Esther Ruiz. That he led the league in stolen bases. With 54. He also led the league in caught stealing, but of course, I mean, his percentage was still very good. He was getting caught a ton. But, like Acuna, he ran a lot. And it looks like he also got hurt at some point at the end of the year there. I would guess in the playoffs. But yeah, he stole a bunch. Other than that, Ryan Noda was top 5 in strikeouts, which is also not a surprise. But here's the league leaders. I'm not going to go too long on this, but you can pause to see kind of some of the league leaders across the league. Julio Rodriguez looks like he definitely should be the MVP. He was far and away looks like the best player. Yeah, best OPS by a lot. We'll go to pitching leaders. It looks like Strider was by far the best guy. Oh yeah, he racked up strikeouts of everybody. And pitcher WAR looks like he's actually not up there, which is kind of interesting. It looks like he was insane this season. Framber, Valdez, Yamamoto, Corbin Burns. Your usual suspects are at the top here, pretty much. When you look at R WAR here and Strider, he's actually tops in R WAR here, so pretty similar. Here, he's he jumped to the top of the leaderboard here. I would be surprised if he didn't win the Cy Young, especially with the 21 wins, and OOTP should for sure kind of seal a deal for him. I would be surprised if he didn't win the Cy Young in this. But the awards will be something that we will see next episode. So after looking across the league, we'll wrap this one up. And we'll be back next episode. I might do a player development special on the new Dev Lab, kind of play around with that a bit, show a bit how to use it, because I think there are some misconceptions about how that kind of works, at least that I've seen, kind of how people have used it and how the devs described it and kind of the little thing that they put out on how it can be best used. So that's going to do it for this episode, and I'll see you next episode when we kick off the off season.